This week, we are covering what's top of mind for everyone, and that is monkeypox. Uh, Summer and I were talking before the show, and she said that there was a client that asked, "What do we do about monkeypox?" This feels like COVID version 2. So we've prepared some Q&A for us to tackle this topic, and we're going to include a link in the show notes for you to download a helpful PDF that you can share with your team to help tackle this topic, keep your team safe, and keep your organization protected. So, Summer, let's jump into it. What should people know from an HR perspective about monkeypox?
Thanks for that great lead in, Joey, because, if we were if you would have asked me, a month ago, if this was going to be a topic on one of our upcoming podcasts, I would have said, I don't quite think so. But I think the rate in which that the infections have occurred has definitely caused some concern, especially from businesses and HR pros who may have since returned to the office from working remote for quite a long time or are planning to. And so, in working with our clients on a day to day basis, the more that I saw this question come up this last week, the more that I felt compelled that we should talk about it and kind of share what we've learned thus far, keeping in mind that, similar to the early stages of COVID and COVID closures, there's still a lot that we don't know. Even, the health professionals over at, the World Health Organization, they don't have the answers to everything. So, wanted to talk a little bit about what we do know, talk a little bit about the questions that we're getting from some of our clients and what some of our suggestions and best practices are. Again, giving what we know today, which could always be subject to change with new discoveries.
So, Summer, we mentioned people who may have returned to office, right? One of the things I look at when there's an issue, I look at all of the sort of spokes of the wheel around an issue, and so there's even the idea of like those road warriors or people who travel for work, or even if we have someone who's tuned in from like the hospitality industry, the restaurant industry, um, industries of large crowds and gatherings or high touch environments. And this is going to impact a lot of us in a lot of different ways from a lot of different perspectives. So all the more reason for us to pay attention to what's going on, get to know the science, and see what's trending. So I think, oh, go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, go for it.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, I was just going to say that, the saying knowledge is power is definitely applicable in this case, because I do think that there's a lot of lessons that we've learned after going through COVID, and that many of them were helpful in, how we're going to navigate monkeypox and from an employer perspective. I think that there's also been a lot of lessons learned from things that didn't go well in COVID that, are helping lead the way with making good decisions early on. So, you mentioned the various industries, but I would also say that companies really need to be evaluating the local areas and where they have employees, whether they're in person, hybrid, and the infection rates for those specific areas. Because, it could be very easy if you are a leader in an area where it's just not really a high infection rate and there's maybe not such an alarm going off at that point in time. But then you have, say, an office or employees in a location like New York where the infection rates are staggering and they're quite high. So just really monitoring the situation for the areas in which you have employees and just being aware of some of those differences right now is number one.
Yeah, and that's for the sake of the health trends, but also one of the things that we saw with COVID is that each state or jurisdiction will make its own determinations about, everything from should people quarantine? Should there be a state of an emergency? Um, will there be a reduction in what's it called when the not population, but the number of people that can be in any given room at any given time, and so you have to watch those determinations because they'll impact your business. Let's say you are a remote organization, but some of your folks go to a co-working space. Well, if that co-working space says we're following protocol and shutting down our business, opening it up for essential people only. Well, if you aren't an essential business, then you're gonna have to figure out where are your employees gonna work from. And so it's a lot to pay attention to. That's kind of one of the reasons why we enjoy tackling topics like this, because we're already in a lot of these states, and especially in some of these major metropolis areas that are setting the tone on how they're responding to these things. And it's just easy for us to share that information to our clients.
Absolutely. And the biggest question that I've been receiving and trying to put folks at a little bit of ease with comes with the disclaimer. And that disclaimer is, we aren't medical experts, but we know where to find the information and how to break it down in a way that's easy to understand. And really, I think the biggest takeaway in regards to monkeypox, based on what we know right now, is that it is not expected and it's not anticipated to be COVID version 2. And the main reason is just in regards to how the disease is transmitted is significantly different. Again, subject to change, right? During COVID, we learned a lot as we went along, and they were like, okay, never mind what we told you last time. This is now what we know. But based on what we do know, and this is from the World Health Organization, the disease is not normally spread easily between people. Which is very different than COVID, right? Because if you were just in close proximity, it could be easily transmitted. And so that's the major difference in between the two viruses, and that you actually have to have very close physical contact to allow it to enter the body in most cases, right? And so I think in trying to make this really easy for companies to determine, how they're going to create internal processes and policies and procedures, if they want to be very conservative and make it easy for everyone to understand, then just re-implement the processes, procedures, and protocols that you used during COVID. That's going to be the safest bet, because it's going to go above and beyond what I think is the minimum necessary to protect your team members.